بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. We left off in the book God's Emissaries about Nabi Nuh alayhi salam, Prophet Noah, and we said that the majority of his people, they turned on him. The ones who were in positions of power and they had wealth and these type of things, they turned their and fought against the prophet for the message that he was saying. And we said many different reasons. They thought that they would come for his position. They said, though, we don't want to be the same level as these other people that we don't like. We are better than those people. And your message says that we are all under, the same status and these type of things. And they couldn't accept those things. So they thought Noah was coming to take their position, said, we run this show. Who are you to come and take our position and all of these things? So they started making attacks against him so people wouldn't listen to him. We see same thing happen today in the time of our messenger, Rasulullah, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa. There's a big campaign for many, many years against Holy Prophet that they try to slander his character, make him, paint him in a bad image, and say negative things about him that I would not even mention. But when we dig deeper and we have inquisitive minds and we don't rely on what people tell us, we start searching, we find that these things are not true. And we don't go to other people outside of Muslims to find out about Muslims. If I want to know about Christians, I don't go to a Muslim and ask, what are those Christians? I need to find out what Christians believe. Muslim, maybe he tells me whatever, but I need to ask those people, what do they believe? What do the books of those people say? Same thing with Islam. If people want to find out about Islam, they need to come to the Muslims. They need to look at Islamic books. They need to look at what the household of Holy Prophet has to say about him and describe him, not taking some academia, for example. And they made a campaign against him. So a lot of times when one way to do da'wah is when someone, they see you doing good actions or good things or something different than normal. They see that you are extra kind or you're extra courteous or you do things that you put other people above yourself and all of these things. And they say, well, why are you so kind? Why do you do so many things? They say, you can tell them, I learned this from my prophet. Prophet Muhammad was mercy to mankind, and he taught us how, to be merciful to people. Things like this. And it starts to change their perception. A lot of times you can talk about Imam Ali alayhi salam because they don't know about him, and then they acknowledge how great he is and how great of a personality he is, or Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and then you tell them, they are following and they learn from their Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa, and this will eradicate for some people that negative image or stereotype that they have. But this is always the case. They make a negative stereotype around the prophet to get people to not look into him. They paint him in a bad image, in a negative connotation. So people, when they hear the name, they say, I don't want anything to do with that. I heard bad stuff about them. I heard bad stuff about that. I just forget about it. Stay away from it. But some people will say, I really want to know. For example, after 9/11, many people converted to Islam because they didn't know about Islam, and they said, what is going on with this, stuff? These people, these terrorist people blew up the towers, horrific act. And we see that they wanted to know what is Islam, what is driving this. And then they study and they realize that event has nothing to do with Islam, and Islam condemns all forms of terrorism and all of these things. And they said they saw the true Islam and started accepting Islam. So they made a campaign against Prophet Noah. said that he was a crazy person, na'udhu billah, and all of these things. Don't listen to him. He is talking, magic and things like this. And they said same thing about Holy Quran. Don't listen to Quran. When the Quran comes, they put their finger in their ears, not to hear it. And they brought someone and said, master in poetry. It says, did he come up with this? Did he write this? Have you heard something like this before? He said, there's no way that he could have done this himself. And no poet or no human being could have made this. This must come from divinely inspired from the creator. And then he said, you have to just tell the people that it is magic. So people made a campaign against him that he is involved with magic. And they did same thing for Nabi Nuh. They said that called him Majnun, or possessed or insane, and they tried to make him ostracized from society. And they did similar with Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when they sent him to the valley of Abu Talib for several years. So we see that the author said, as time passed, tensions increased between Noah and the leaders of society. Their attacks became more and more irrational, and they would announce to all that he is insane, and they would do everything in their power to ostracize him from society. Aging fathers began telling their sons on their deathbed, saying, my son, if you survive me, do not follow this madman. So this was the reaction of those leaders. And the only people that were following Nabi Nuh were the people that society was looking down on them. And then in the book is something interesting. It comes from Bahar al-Anwar. The author brings about the women. He says, because now we were talking about how people reacted to his message. So the leaders of society were fighting him. And he said that it says that the women started opposing Prophet Noah because he's telling them to be chaste and to adhere to the message of, the one true God. So they started doing opposites to defy Noah. Noah says, don't do this, they do opposite. So he said there were women who began dressing and acting indecently, dousing themselves in perfume, mingling with men in illicit pleasures. So they were with free mingling and doing whatever they pleased with whoever they pleased. They would, says they would adorn themselves with jewelry and don silken garments and sit with men in public celebration. Until that time, he says, until that period of time when they started doing these things, women used to have their cycle one time a year. It wasn't like now where a woman has cycle every month. Before, the narrations say that it was in one time of year, once a year, up until this time of Noah. And it said, Allah made them after this time to start having their cycle month to month, to diminish their desire and to occupy themselves with the cycle. And so men would distance themselves from them. Because in that time, the women were following their desire and their passion in opposing Noah, doing the opposite, started doing illicit things. So now, instead of them having their cycle annually, they started having their cycle monthly. And he said, this retribution initially affected only this group of women who were about 700. But however, in coming generations, the progeny of the women with monthly cycles started interbred and married with the progeny of the other women who had annual cycle. And he said, since the women with monthly cycles were more successful at conceiving and bearing children, this trait came to dominate and eventually drove the other trait of the annual cycle into extinction. And now it said up until this time of Nabi Nuh, they had annual cycle, and from this time onward, they had monthly cycle, which is something interesting. It says 300 years had passed since Noah began his mission, and he was now 1,150 years old. And he felt increasingly each day that his efforts were futile. So few had believed, and so many stood against him. So he's been trying to preach for 300 years. It's hard to preach for 3 days, let alone 300 years. So he's saying, like, I've been doing all this effort and no one is listening. They're all fighting me. The author, he says, he began to entertain thoughts of giving up, not because he lacked the resolve, but he felt people were too far gone to come back to Allah. This is a natural phenomenon that happens with people. Sometimes they just feel like, what am I doing with these people? They're not listening. They're not adhering to whatever we are telling them, whatever we say. They're doing the opposite of this. I'm tired of these people giving me a hard time, and I give up with them. We see like Nabi Yunus alayhi salam, when we talk about him, he was tired of them and he left them. It's like, I'm leaving. And then they all turned to Allah and asked forgiveness and asked to bring their prophet back to him, and they benefited from their repentance. And we see that through that story, that it's never too late for the people. But a lot of times, anyone who is giving advice, they get discouraged at times that their community is just fighting them and they don't want them and they don't want to benefit. And imagine a prophet of God who is getting messages and revelation from Allah, from speaking with angels, has this communication and this weight on him that he needs to guide humanity on that level. It must be very, like, so much weight on your shoulders to think about, and all of these people are attacking you and giving you a hard time and fighting you, and all you want to do is give them guidance, let alone like someone like us, or a teacher, or a scholar, or even like in medicine, a doctor is telling a patient, don't do this, don't do this and that. It's going to cause you problems. The guy or lady, whoever, they go and they do it anyway. Then they come back like 2-3 weeks later with the same illness or worse. And the doctor says, well, what did you do? Oh, I did this, this, and that. I told you not to do that. You shouldn't do that. And this is the outcome of your what you did. You ate too many sweets, and now your diabetes, your sugar is too high, and all of these things. I told you to stay away from the candy bars, but they did it anyway. And then they come and they go do it again, and they come back and they get really bad. And then they're going to have to cut their foot or something like that. And he said, I told you, not to do that, but you keep doing it. And then maybe by the third time, the doctor is like, I'm done with this guy. Like, this person, I am fed up with them. They are never going to listen. Just forget about him and just give him to someone else. I don't even want to see this person anymore. And, they get tired and fed up of them. So it's a natural phenomenon, or a natural feeling that people get. They get tired of trying to guide people if they are ungrateful to them or treat them bad. So he says one time they beat Nabi Nuh so severely that he was unconscious for 3 days and blood was coming out of his ears. I mean, imagine, this is how people treated prophets of God. So how can we even complain when someone is giving us a hard time or says bad things about us, or these things, when we see that prophets of God were getting beaten? Didn't they throw rocks at Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Dumped animal entrails on him, garbage on him, threw thorns in his path. When we look at these things, we can truly say whatever we are going through is nothing. Maybe someone doesn't want to pray salat behind the person, like someone doesn't want to pray salat behind me. Okay, no big deal. Is this something like someone is beating me and throwing rocks at me and treating me bad? No, this is something small when we look at what the prophets had to go through. And it shows us the sabr that they had. He said, at sunrise, after the morning prayer, when he was about to ask Allah to send down his wrath on them, he was approached by an army of 12,000 tribes of angels from the lowest level of the sky. They had come to beg him not to lose hope in his people just yet. Witnessing this massive display of Allah's mercy, Noah found a renewed sense of purpose and announced to the angels that he would continue to preach for another generation, 300 years, before giving up on them if Allah allowed him to live that long. So we see that Nabi Nuh was tired. He was like, I am done. These people have beaten me. I wake up. I'm going to ask Allah to destroy these people. But the angels came and asked him not to. Just bear with them a little longer. How much patience that must take to do that. Many times we give up on people, but Allah is merciful and caring for the creation way more so than we give up very easily, and we lose our mercy and become harsh very easily. Let just one person cut us off in the traffic and see how we deal. Or I remember seeing this funny saying. It said, you never really truly know a person until you experience them with slow Wi-Fi. And then you see the real reality of the person. So if we cannot even bear these small things, no internet or no slow Wi-Fi, imagine what the sabr that these prophets had to deal with people that were abusing them and treating them bad and beating them. And he says, Allah is merciful. I should, there's some reasoning behind this. I should continue, and I'll teach another 300 years. Not 3 years or 30 years, 300 years. He said, with characteristic zeal and patience, Noah resumed his mission, calling his people night and day, in public and in private. He conveyed to them Allah's promises of mercy and forgiveness and of worldly blessing. He later recounted his effort in a conversation with Allah. So Nabi Nuh alayhi salam, he has conversation with Allah, which says, my Lord, I've summoned my people night and day. However, my summons has only increased them to run away from me. Whenever I call them so that you might absolve them, they have stuck their fingers in their ears. They took their cloak and put it over their head. They persisted in their refusal to hear me. They have been incredibly arrogant. I called them openly, and I spoke to them publicly and in private and told them, seek your Lord's forgiveness. Do istighfar, for he is all forgiving. If you do, he will send down on you abundant rain from the sky and will aid you with wealth and sons and provide you with gardens and provide you with streams. What is the matter with you that you do not look to Allah with veneration? It's like, what is your problem, people? Like, why are you abandoning Allah? Allah has all these good things for you and you just turn away. Like, what is going on with you? He says, though he has created you through various stages, have you not seen how Allah created the sky in 7 layers, how he has made therein the moon for light and the sun for a lamp? It is Allah who made you grow from the earth, and then he will return you to it and then bring you forth from it. And it is Allah who has made the earth expansive for you so that you can travel upon its wide roads. Showing them Allah has given you all of these beautiful things and done all of these good things. All I'm doing is telling you to go back to Allah, turn away from the things you are doing that are haram, and turn and see what Allah wants from you. What earns Allah's pleasure? Allah is giving you all of these things. You should show your gratitude to Allah through your actions, not just saying it. They weren't even saying it. They were just rejecting it outright and said that they were the best of beings and there is no God, or they turn away from God and messenger and they wanted to live their own life. And I don't need to worry about those things. I'm just enjoying myself. He says the response he received from this generation, the next 300 years, was no better than their parents. They were as stubborn and as arrogant as their parents had been. And so Noah considered at the end of their generation to call down Allah's wrath on them. Once again, a massive envoy of 12,000 tribes of angels. They came this time from the second level of the sky. They came and asked him to reconsider this. Once again, he agreed to persevere for another generation, another 300 years. He says, resolving to have patience with his people as long as Allah did. It was during the year 900 of his mission. Imagine teaching these difficult people for 900 years. The patience that we can gain from this. That when we want to give up after 9 hours or 9 days or 9 months, remember that Nabi Nuh is still at it at 900 years. As he approached his own 1750th year, that it became clear to him that his people had already sealed their own fate. Nothing he could say or do could affect them. He's like, I cannot do anything else for them. The believers that followed Prophet Nuh were only a few hundred, and many of these had weak faith. So at last resort, he issued one final threat to his people of severe punishment from Allah. Defiantly, they said, Noah, you have argued with us. You've argued with us a lot. Go ahead and bring it on. Bring on whatever you say. All this punishment you talk about, you threaten us with, bring it on. If you're truthful, just ask Allah to send it on us now. We don't even believe you anymore. He said, only Allah can bring it down if he wishes. And when he does, you will not be able to avoid it. If Allah wants to lead you astray, even my good wishes could not benefit you. If I were to wish you well, he is your Lord, and to him you will be returned. If I have fabricated this, then my sin is on me. But if you are wrong, then I am free from your sins. This is Quran, Surah 11, ayats 32 through 35. It says, as always, Noah turned to Allah to seek his help. He said, O Lord, Ya Rab, aid me through that which they deny. He wanted Allah to follow through on his threats and prove him right by crushing them with the very same divine retribution that they had denied. With renewed determination, Noah told his people, O people, if it's hard on you that I have stayed so long among you and constantly reminded you of Allah's signs, then do whatever you want and know that I have put my trust in Allah. So conspire all together along with those idols you believe that are Allah's partners, and let nothing of your plan cause you the least remorse. Then carry it out against me without giving me any respite. If you turn your backs on me, you shall not harm me at all. For if I have not asked for you any compensation, my compensation is only with Allah, and I have been commanded to be among those who submit to him. This is Quran, Surah 10, ayat 71 through 72. So he says, go ahead, call on your idols, do whatever you want. I am not afraid of these things. I put my trust in Allah. Even if Noah is outnumbered, a lot of time we see majority of people doing something, and we are afraid to go against the majority. We want an easy life. We want to just follow along with the flow. We have to be so firm in our faith that it doesn't matter if the whole world turned against us. We say, okay, khalas, forget about it. That's fine. You can all turn against me. It doesn't matter, because I put my trust in Allah. I trust in him to be my wakil, my protector, my helper, my guide. I don't care if everyone turned on me. We have to gain this type of resolve. We have to take this lesson from life of Nabi Nuh alayhi salam. Noah's followers also begged him to ask Allah for relief from the torment they constantly faced for his sake. Because they were following the Prophet, they used to take a lot of problems from people and society. They were treated badly. We see same with Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is why we see, for example, Ammar and Sumayya and the martyrs, early martyrs of Islam. what they had to suffer. We look at how Bilal al-Habashi, they placed the rock on his chest and he kept saying Al-Ahad, Al-Ahad when they wanted him to say that he believed in the idols. He kept saying Allah's name, Al-Ahad, the one and only. There is only one God. We see what they had to face and that they eventually had to migrate to Abyssinia to seek refuge with the Christian king. So we see that followers of Prophet were facing a lot of problems, and the same was going on at this time. So he asked Allah to remove, they asked Nabi Nuh to ask Allah to remove this from them. So he turned to Allah and said, "O Lord, my people have rejected me. So judge between me and them, and save me and the believers who are with me." And he prayed, "I am vanquished, so come to my aid." Like he is overcome. For those who live their lives in devotion to Allah, their prayers answer come swiftly. So Allah confirmed Nabi Nuh's conclusion and justified his feelings of, all of the things that he was going through. And he told him, "No one from your people shall believe except those who have already believed. So do not grieve for what they used to do." This is Quran, Surah 11, Ayah 36. So Allah is reassuring him and telling him that no one else from those people are going to believe, only those ones that are already there. And don't worry about what they are doing. That basically Allah will take care of them. He will handle that situation. It was then when he heard Allah's judgment and confirmation of what he had perceived to be true, and when he called down Allah's wrath with abandon, he said, "My Lord, they have disobeyed me and followed those whose wealth and children only added to their loss, who have plotted to deceive outrageously, who tell them, 'Do not abandon your gods. Do not abandon Wad, nor Suwa, nor Yaghuth, or Ya'uk, or Nasr,' is the name of their idols. And these leaders have already led many astray. O Allah, add only to the wrongdoers error. O Lord, do not leave a single being from the non-believers on earth. If you do leave them, they will misguide your servants, and they will only bear sinful and faithless progeny. O Lord, forgive me and my parents and those believers who have entered my house from my followers, and all believing men and women, and add only to the wrongdoers destruction." This is Quran, Surah 71, ayat 21 through 28. So Nabi Nuh is asking Allah to bring his wrath on those people because they have so many years and generations defiantly went against Allah. And Allah told him that no more believers will come from those people. So there's no hope for them at this point. They have sealed their fate, as the name of the chapter states, and that none of them were turning back. And that Nabi Nuh is saying that these people are no good. If you leave them here, they're only going to make the same thing again, to destroy them. So Allah, it was some wisdom behind how this is going to take place. So Noah had finished praying. Right then, Jibreel came and told him that Allah had heard his prayers, and he answered his prayers. And he brought with him 7 date pits and ordered Nabi Nuh alayhi salam and his followers to plant those dates. He communicated to them Allah's promise and told them they would find their salvation from their trials when these date bits, when they grew into full-grown trees and they bore fruit, that's when the promise will come. They were excited and they couldn't wait for that day when their promise will be fulfilled. So Allah had the author says Allah had 2 reasons for postponing these salvation from the believers and the destruction of the disbelievers at that present moment, right then. He said, on one hand, he chose not to destroy the non-believers immediately because of his forbearance and unshakable sense of justice. He was loath to leave room for anyone to even conjecture that he had wronged someone. So he wanted to make sure for the people that they didn't feel anyone was wronged unjustly. So to give them some time. It says in particular, the ranks of the non-believers comprised of newborn infants, children. He didn't want anyone to go back and say, maybe those children that were disbelievers that were destroyed, maybe they would have grown up and answered Prophet Noah's call. Someone could say that. He destroyed all of them. What about those babies? They could have been believers if they grew up and had a chance. This was postponed, one of these reasons. So Allah had made these women sterile for the next 40 years or so, it says. And in this way, any child born up to the 900th year of Noah's mission was able to grow up, mature to the age of 50, and make his own choice before his fate was sealed. So no new people were born in that time, and the other ones had a chance to grow up and make their decision. In the meantime, Allah commanded Noah to continue preaching to them, despite his knowledge that none who had not yet believed would believe. Even though he knew they weren't going to believe, he still keep preaching to them. He told them, Noah, they are my creatures and my servants. I will only destroy them after you have redoubled your efforts and sealed my case against them. This is how merciful Allah is. So redouble your efforts to call the people, and I will reward you for it. Thus Allah sealed his case against every human being, whether adult or child, while maintaining the immaculate record of justice, he says, the adala, the justice of Allah. So no one could come later and say these children, they were killed, but they could have been believer. And on the other hand, this was one reason. On the other hand, he chose not to grant Noah's followers swift salvation, but to test them and separate the sincere in faith from the weak in faith. Not everyone who says they believe they are believers. When they get tried, a lot of them abandon the religion. And look in the battlefields, look in Battle of Uhud, for example, how many people ran away from Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How many people stayed with him when they were tried? They ran away. So we see who is the weak in faith and the strong in faith. He said, when the 7 date trees grew and bore fruit, Noah's followers eagerly collected the harvest and brought it to him. Allah had told them that they would find their salvation from their tribulations when these date pits grew into mature trees and gave fruit. And they looked to Noah to make good on this promise. He turned to Allah and prayed on their behalf. Against their expectations, Allah once again commanded them to eat these dates and plant their pits, repeating his promise that they would find their salvation from their tribulations when these date pits grew into mature trees and gave fruits. So he repeated it, gave them more date seeds and told them, grow these ones, and when these ones grow, then it will happen. So a large number of the believers, it says maybe a third, felt they had been abandoned by Allah and betrayed by Noah. So they left the faith and joined with the enemies. Others remained steadfast and did as they were commanded by Allah. So a lot of them, so Noah told them first, plant these 7 date trees. When they grow, they give fruit. The punishment will come on the disbelievers, and the help will come to believers. They're waiting for this patiently. The time came, nothing happened. More date seeds were given, said, grow these ones, and then when these ones grow, it takes a while for trees to grow, from a seed. Wait again, when these ones grow and bear fruit, then we will do it. So a lot of them left. They said Noah, as maybe they're calling Noah a liar, or they disbelieved in him, and they said, oh, he's just telling us to do it again. And they left and joined the disbelievers. And they didn't have faith in their prophet to be truthful. And we see this happened when Nabi Musa alayhi salam went to the mountain for 30 days, and then Allah extended it by 10, and he stayed 40 days. And the people abandoned, just within this short amount of time, people abandoned the call of Nabi Musa alayhi salam and started worshiping an idol. They made a golden calf and started worshiping this calf. So we see that this has happened throughout generations, that people, uh, when the promise is extended or something happens, they leave and they abandon when they are tried and tested. And a lot of people say, how could all of the companions, so many of them, be around Holy Prophet, see Holy Prophet, and abandon him and turn on his family and go astray and do all of these things? It has happened before. The proof of something happening is we have seen it before, right? We have seen this happen with Musa. All of the people of Musa, except Harun and some other followers, very small amount, they turned and started worshiping an idol. They were just with the prophet. They went through Red Sea, they went through all of these things, they have witnessed all of these miracles from Nabi Musa firsthand. They had food coming from heavens, even all type of things. But Musa is gone extra 10 days. They went right back to idol worship. We see same thing here with Nabi Nuh. People tell, oh, give it another cycle of growing the date trees for your punishment to come to them and your help to come to you. They said, oh, forget it, we leave. And they disbelieve. It is very possible that this can happen. And all of these things have happened before. So they were tried once again to see, which of the believers, what is happening, if they stay steadfast to the will of Allah, to the plan of Allah, or do they abandon the plan? So when the new crop came and ripened, the same series of events happened again. And once again, another group of people left again. Only 70 odd loyalists to Nabi Nuh remained steadfast as they were commanded by Allah. When the dates ripened for the third time, the remaining believers pleaded with Noah and said, only a few of us are left. If you delay this salvation, this help any further, we fear that we're not able to remain strong in faith anymore. So one man expressed such loyalty that he said, "O Rasulullah, whether you do this for us, what you have promised or not, I testify that you are a truthful prophet sent by Allah. We will never doubt in you no matter what you do." So this is the strength and resolve that we have to have, is like this person. No matter what tests or trials come our way, we always have to believe in the truthfulness of Prophet and the truthfulness of Quran and the message that the prophets have given us. Noah conveyed their cries and their sincere loyalty to Allah, and Allah replied. Whereupon he replied, "At last morning has broken through the black of night. The truth has been filtered of all impurities. If I had destroyed the non-believers and left in your ranks those who have now turned their backs on you, I would have failed to fulfill my promise to those who have sincerely worshipped me and held fast to you as their prophet. I had promised them that I would make them my vicegerents in the land and give them freedom to practice religion, that I would replace their fear with sanctuary by removing any form of doubt from their hearts so that they could worship me alone. How could I have fulfilled this for them when I knew the weakness of those who have now left? For whenever they would have gained power over the land, their hypocrisy would have shown its countenance, and they would have shown their brethren enmity and competed with them for power." So we see that Allah wanted to sift out the true believers from the hypocrites. And we see that in Quran and Surah Ankabut, the second ayat, I believe, that do you think that you will be left alone saying that you believe and you will not be tested? Allah has tested those who has come before you to see who are, the ones who are truthful and the ones who are liars. Paraphrasing the ayat. So Allah tests these people to see who remain truthful. And we have to take lessons from these things and think that sometimes we think something should come right now, but sometimes we need to wait for it, and we need to be patient and know that Allah's time is the best time. Our time we think is the best may not be the best. We need to have sabr, have patience. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. Allah is with the patient ones. And this is one lesson that we can take from Nabi Nuh and his followers. And also, no matter what comes our way, how difficult things get, how bad people treat us, or all of these things, we have to remain steadfast to the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we will end here and continue the next week, inshallah.